mentally, but our spirits are strong. Strong as can we will always be brave. We shall not be moved. We will not stand down. So much time has passed. Please come back around. We shall not be moved. We will not back down. The game has things and creeds. The same face I don't have any. I'm still feeling pain. I'm fighting each other like Abel and Cain. Young you would think you superior to me. Y'all were created so equal and free. Why go do your research?
Hello, everybody. Brianna, perfect. It is about 1 o'clock. We'll be getting started here in just a few minutes. So if folks want to take their seats and we can begin.
We will not back down. We came as kings and queens. The same face hold us down. Don't trust standing in my shoes, trust standing in my skin. Cause I wear it loud and proud and I feel it from within. No more wiggle, no more slaves here. We're gonna work it out right now. Fun, we stand for now. We shall not be moved. We will not stand down. So much time has passed. Please come back around. We shall not be moved. We will not back down. We came as kings and queens, but slavery slowed us down. Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Lord, we never know it could have reached ya. Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, stacking up the brothers and the sisters, Stephen Clark, Michael Brown. It's too numerous to even mention. Tanisha Anderson, Walter Scott. Oh Lord, my God, it up to stop. We shall not be moved. Anna Makida, we will not stand down. Shaki Allen, so much time has passed. I know. Things come back around. We shall not be moved. We will not back down. We came as kings and queens. The slavery slowed us down. Shout.
All right, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Welcome to the Minneapolis Day of Reparations to African People. The Hands Off Uhuru, Stop the FBI Attacks on the African People's Socialist Party. My name is Uhuru. For those of you who don't know, Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. So you'll be hearing that a lot this afternoon, and maybe by the end of it, you'll be chanting back to us. So that's the hope, you'll hear it a lot. My name is Sarah, and I am the National Secretary and Volunteer Coordinator of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and I will also be your MC for today's event. So a huge salute to everybody who made it out here today. Thank you so much. This is actually a very historic event, and we are thrilled that you all made it. A critical point that I want everybody to understand, that we want folks to understand, is that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is an organization created by and under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party as a strategy to go into our own white communities to raise reparations and win solidarity with Black power. So I actually was drawn to this movement 2 years ago this same event. So the same event, Day of Reparations 2020, because this was the only organization I saw doing this. And it turns out that this was the organization I had been looking for. So we are thrilled to have you all here. Before we really jump into today's events and today's speakers, just a couple of house cleaning items. Please turn all cell phones off or to silent or to vibrate so as not to disrupt any of the speakers or today's events. Bathrooms are just on the outside of this room. So men's restrooms here, women's restrooms just outside down the hall a little bit. The AV team will be taking pictures today. And a video which will be available online after the event. Please no video or photography of your own unless approved by our AV team. If you are connected to Wi-Fi, please disconnect so that we have the proper bandwidth for our live streaming and things of that nature. And if you feel so inclined, please share from Facebook that we are here at facebook.com/Uhuru Solidarity. And lastly, we will be having a Q&A event followed by the speakers today. So, all right. So now we can really dive in. Today is the third event on our annual Days of Reparations to African People tour and the sixth stop on the larger overall Hands Off Uhuru tour. Thank you everyone again for being here. I want to salute the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is leading the International African Revolution. Chairman Omali created the theory of African internationalism, which you will be hearing about today, which is the theory that explains the world as it is, which is not necessarily how white people understand it or see it. It allows us as white people to see the world through the eyes of the African working class. I also want to salute Ona Zane Yeshitela, the deputy chair of the African People's Socialist Party, who is leading the 50 self-determination institutions that are laying the foundation for the anti-colonial, liberated African economy. And lastly, I want to salute and welcome to today's event our leadership in the Solidarity Movement. Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who has worked for more than 4 decades, 4.5 decades, under the leadership of the party to build principled white solidarity with this African revolution. And Jesse Neville, chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, who provides leadership to all of us in USM in building the mass movement for white reparations to African people. This event today is significant because it is taking place just 2 months after the homes and offices of 7 locations of the Uhuru movement leaders were violently raided and attacked by the FBI on July 29th of this year. We want to talk about the significance of this attack on the right of African people to organize for their liberation and self-determination. To start off the program, we're going to show a short video of these July 29th raids on the Uhuru movement.
Mr. CSGI, you have a federal warrant for this address. Keep your hands up and follow orders. This CSGI, we have a warrant.
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out, something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
Can't breach for you. They want, I don't know. What's all back my money? All of it.
It will build a movement of white people that says hands off the movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we have the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of Black people around the world.
Uhuru. So that is a big reason why this event is so significant. The FBI comes through, you know, you're doing something right. So we sort of think. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with our speakers today. I'd like to start by introducing the chairman of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, Jesse Neville. Jesse leads the work to build the mass organization of white reparations to African people throughout the US and the world. Along with Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and Adjunct Prop Director Akile and I, Jesse was listed as, quote, one of the unindicted co-conspirators in this bogus allegation issued by the federal government against the Uhuru movement.
All right. That's okay. Thank you. Hands off Uhuru.
Hands off Uhuru.
Unity through
Reparation.
Uhuru. Thank you so much and welcome everyone. Thank you to Sarah for the introduction. And it's really an honor to be here in Minneapolis for the Day of Reparations to African People. And before I begin giving a brief presentation to kick off this event, I wanted to give a special salute to Leah Fifield. And for anyone who does not know, Leah was the lead organizer of this event for several months. Leah has been working very hard to make this event happen. And she was unexpectedly not able to be here today due to exposure to COVID-19. Leah is okay and doing well, but due to protocols around that, Leah wasn't able to actually be here physically, but she is here in everything that has happened today. And this comrade has been instrumental every step of the way in making this event happen. So we know Leah is watching online, and we just want to say, we wouldn't be here today without all of your hard work and dedication, and we express our love, salute, and appreciation to you, comrade Leah Fifield. Uhuru. I'd also like to profoundly salute the Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, under whose leadership we in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement have the honor to work. In particular, we extend our deepest salutes to the founder, leader, and chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who we are honored to have here with us today, Uhuru Chairman. The chairman will be our keynote speaker, and we're very excited and honored to have Chairman Omali Yeshitela with us today, who has fought for more than 50 years to complete the Black Revolution of the 1960s. And I also want to join in saluting Deputy Chair Ona Zane Yeshitela, the brilliant and visionary African revolutionary leader responsible for leading all of the party's economic work to make the vision of African liberation tangible. So Uhuru to Deputy Chair Ona Zane. And I want to salute my direct leadership, the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who is here with us today as well. And Chairwoman Penny Hess was present at the founding conference of the African People's Solidarity Committee when the party and the chairman created this organization under its leadership to organize white people to stand in principled solidarity with the African Revolution 46 years ago today, on this weekend in St. Petersburg, Florida. So Uhuru to that, and Uhuru to Chairwoman Penny. And I want to say welcome to all of you who came here today, and Uhuru, and salute you, because you have made a very important and meaningful decision by taking the time out of your Saturday to be here with us today for this day of reparations. And I am confident that this decision to be here with us today is one that you will remember for the rest of your life, because this is not just an event. This is a call to action. It is a rallying cry, and it is a doorway into the revolutionary movement of African people that is changing the world. The African Revolution, a beautiful, relentless, vibrant, serious, focused, optimistic, global revolutionary movement with one aim: to rid the world of oppression, war, violence, and exploitation, and bring about a future in which all can live in peace and prosperity, with no segment of humanity profiting off the bloodshed and misery of another. This event is a point of entry into a movement under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela that has fought for the past 50 years to liberate and unite Africa and African people everywhere from the looting machine that the chairman calls the colonial mode of production, that has fed our bellies, our bank accounts, and even our self-image as white people for the past 600 years. It is a movement led by the African working class, a movement whose leader, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, launched a campaign over 40 years ago to make reparations a household word. So raise your fist if you believe reparations are owed to African people. All right, it's everybody, that's everyone in the room, great. And if that's one of the reasons why you came here today, because you saw the word reparations on this flyer and you wanted to make a point to be here, then whether you knew it or not, it was Chairman Omali Yeshitela who got you to this event today. And it is this movement under the leadership of the chairman and deputy chair that has built more than 50 political and economic institutions of African working class self-government, building the capacity of African people to feed, clothe, and house themselves, and negating the presence of the colonial mode of production in the lives of African people. And it is for all of those reasons that this movement and its leadership, like Marcus Garvey in the 1920s, like Malcolm X in 1965, like Martin Luther King in 1968, like Fred Hampton in 1969, has now come under violent attack on July 29th of this year by the US government's secret political police, known as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. As we saw in that video, on July 29th at 5 a.m., the FBI raided the home of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, and held them at gunpoint, handcuffed them, exploded flashbang grenades in their home, deployed a drone, smashed through windows, looted their home, stole their computers, phones, files, and other properties, at the same time that they raided 6 other homes and offices of Uhuru movement leaders. They did this under the offensive and ludicrous claim that the Uhuru movement's work over the past half century to win African freedom and self-determination has been orchestrated not by the leadership of the chairman and African people, but by the Russian government. No formal charges have yet been brought against the chairman or anyone else in the Uhuru movement. But as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has made clear, the party is not waiting for the FBI to finish scouring through emails, text messages, and files to try to cook up some basis for deepening their political attack on the African People's Socialist Party under the cover of law. The party is not waiting. The party is not retreating. The party is not on the defensive. They are on the counteroffensive. It is the US government, the colonial state, and the FBI who have blood on their hands that they must explain and defend, not African people. So today we're going to talk about the fight back, the counteroffensive, the campaign to say to the US government, the FBI, and any colonial entity that wants to put their bloody hands on Chairman Omali Yeshitela or the African People's Socialist Party, we say, hands off Uhuru. It is no small thing for us to be here in Minneapolis, the location of the 2020 uprisings that ignited the flames of resistance all around the world. This event today is a day of reparations to African people, a call to the white community to stand up and unite under the leadership of the African Revolution in the fight for reparations and justice. This is an annual campaign and tour organized by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement based on the constitutional mandate from our leadership to win the highest expression of what genuine white solidarity with African liberation looks like. We have held events this year in Oakland, Portland, as well as supported and participated in Hands Off Uhuru campaign events in Philly, Newark, and New York. And from here, we will be heading back to St. Louis to organize for the National March for Reparations to African People on October 15th, Saturday of this year. And we want to invite and encourage everybody here to make the trip to the March for Reparations in St. Louis on October 15th. So I want to end by saying that this Day of Reparations will set out to fulfill a pledge of solidarity with the African Revolution. We pledge to defend the right of African people to advocate and organize for their liberation and unification. We pledge to carry out our strategic assignment behind enemy lines to win hundreds of thousands of white people to say hands off the Uhuru movement, reparations now. We pledge to raise funds towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee that will not be waiting for indictments, but instead will be pursuing proactive legal action against the US government for this vicious and indefensible assault on the right of African people to the supposed freedom of speech and freedom of assembly conferred by the US Constitution. So I want to thank you, all of you again, for being here, and close by saying that one of the many things we have learned from the chairman is that the imperialists, the US, is always fighting the last war. They think they can come in and do a clean sweep like they did in the 1960s, crush the movement and call it a day, but it won't happen. The African People's Socialist Party is here and they are winning. And as white people today, we will learn our responsibility and our interest in turning our backs on this horrific genocidal social system and finding our future in solidarity with the liberation of African people and in unity through reparation. Uhuru. Uhuru.
Sure, Jesse, thank you so much for that. I love the idea that the US is always fighting the last war. When I look at that video that we watched, all I can think of is how foolish to think that the FBI could come in and shut up the party and the revolution with those outdated and brute force tactics. With the organization that we have, that the party has, led by Chairman Omali Yeshitela, it's going to take a lot more than that. So I would now like to introduce our next speaker. It is an honor to introduce another unindicted co-conspirator. Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess, has been a member of APSC since its founding in 1976. Working under the party's leadership to carry out Chairman Omali Yeshitela's brilliant scientific strategy of organizing members of the colonizer settler nation to break our allegiance to imperialism and to unite in principled material solidarity with the African Revolution. Penny Hess was the first white person to become a revolutionary African internationalist by joining APSC and taking up the call to build the movement for white reparations to African people. Chairwoman Penny speaks and organizes throughout the US and Europe to educate white people about the history of colonialism and slavery that we have historically benefited from and participated in, and how we can be a part of rectifying our relationship to the rest of humanity. She is the author of the incredible book called Overturning the Culture of Violence, written under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you. Uhuru, I want to salute everyone who came out today to this incredibly important event. I think it's the most important thing that we could be talking about today. And I appreciate all of the comrades who, Lisa, Sarah, Leah, that we talked about before, and so many other comrades who are here in Minneapolis that made this happen. And I want to start by saying hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. That is the slogan, hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa, because the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela was not attacked because of something local that they did. They were attacked, as the chairman has laid out, because the African People's Socialist Party is very serious about liberating Africa and African people as one oppressed people around the world, and destroying the system of the colonial mode of production, this vicious system of parasitic capitalism, of colonial capitalism built on the backs of African people. And I want to join in the salute to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, to Deputy Chair Ona Sine Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party, which is my leadership. I want to be very clear that everything that I understand about the world comes from Chairman Omali Yeshitela in terms of the science, the understandings politically, but also in the profound humanity of the African revolution that has been fighting for 600 years, ever since the first Europeans set foot in Africa and forced an African person to do something against their will, as the chairman has said. And I know that on July 29th of this year, as has been said, there were 6 offices and homes that were raided very violently. This only shows a little tiny bit of 3 minutes of what happened that went on for about 6 hours. It was coordinated with St. Louis, 5 a.m., and St. Petersburg, Florida, which is on the Eastern time zone, 6 a.m., all happened at the same time. So phones were jammed, so nobody could be called to alert somebody else that this might happen. They broke down doors with huge battering rams. They had flashbang grenades thrown into the chairman's house and to the Solidarity Center. They came into, you saw there was an army coming into the Uhuru House of St. Petersburg, Florida, which has been there since about 1993 or 1993. And which has an incredible trove of archives and pictures and articles and documents that they took out and just, forever destroyed, to destroy the history of the African liberation movement that has continued to fight no matter what. And on that morning, Chairman Omali Yeshitela was already up, as he tells the story. He was already awake, deputy chair. It was the same day that at the Uhuru House in St. Louis, the African People's Education and Defense Fund, which is the coordinators of the Black Power Blueprint, along with Black Star Industries, were holding the training of 14 women, African women from the local community around the Uhuru House in St. Louis to be trained as doulas. That was part of their training. That went on, I want to say. That did not stop. That is the relentless nature of the African People's Socialist Party. And as the chairman, they were already up, chairman and deputy chair Ona, they were discussing the day, what they were going to be doing, all the things that were going to be happening. And they heard this voice, and the chairman came down the stairs first. And as he came down, he saw the red laser sightings that all of these thugs were holding assault rifles pointed at him. And he was aware that they had the power of life and death over him, as they have done against African people who have fought for and won at times power in the hands of African people. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, and also on the continent of Africa, Patrice Lumumba, and also the attacks on Kwame Nkrumah and others. And every time African people fight for their liberation, fight against this vicious system. They are viciously and violently attacked. And it will never intimidate or stop Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And I want to say also that I am incredibly honored and proud to be a so-called co-conspirator, unindicted co-conspirator on the side of the African Revolution and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And from the white community, we will not be intimidated. We will continue to struggle and to fight. And I want to, Jesse, Comrade Chair Jesse, who's just done an incredible job leading and building the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee. The chair, Jesse mentioned that today is the 46th anniversary of the founding of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which is amazing and profound, because the African People's Solidarity Committee is unlike any other organization that is out there. This is an organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, formed by, as part of the strategy for the liberation of African people, to extend the African Revolution behind enemy lines. And when I came to that conference in St. Petersburg, Florida, so many years ago, I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. And about the world, really, about the struggle, about what it was that we are called on to do. But it has been the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela that has taught me and us everything that we know about the world, and we've got to take this on. And what I want to do, because my job as the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee, I want you to be able to never again see the world as you experience it or understand it. I want your lives to be changed. I know I couldn't walk away that day in 1976 after hearing Chairman Omali Yeshitela speak, and I want us here in Minneapolis, to look at this reality and to never be able to look at another street sign that says Hiawatha or Minnehaha or, or even the memorial to George Floyd, without realizing and having it brought home to us in the deepest way that this is somebody else's land, that this land, all beautiful for white people, one of the best places in the country for white people to live, one of the worst places, according to statistics I've read, for African people to live, right here in Minneapolis, that for us to live this life, this land is soaked in the blood of African and indigenous people. And it is a struggle that does not go away. It is there. It is just under the surface, ready, as we saw when George Floyd was brutally assassinated, murdered here in the city, that it is a struggle that rises up, an earthquake of resistance that is there just under the surface. And it is incredibly important that we take on this question, and that we look at the world as the African People's Socialist Party is challenging us to do, the way the world really is, not the narrative of the colonizer, which, as the chairman says, scratches the name off and calls it something else and says, we're the good ones, we're the reasonable ones, we're the ones who are brilliant and have created everything, as opposed to the slaughter, the terror, just the vicious violence that it requires to carry out colonialism every single day. So in the African People's Solidarity Committee, we're not allies. We don't show up for African people. We're not the good white people. We're not, something to make ourselves feel better. We're not fighting against racism, and we're not about charity or anything else. We are an organization of the African Revolution that is fighting for the unification of African people all around the world under African working class led socialist government that will uplift the struggling and colonized peoples every place else on the planet and end US imperialism once and for all, and turn this into a planet where human beings and all living things can actually survive and live. And that is the world that I want to see. And we want that world. We want a world without war, without this violence that we see imposed on others in our name. But we have work to do, and we have to go into the white community to take that on. The chairman talks about an incredibly important concept, and that's called colonialism as the mode of production. A mode of production is how things are produced in the society that we live in. And that the chairman is saying it's colonialism. Colonialism could be defined as a foreign and alien state power occupying through violence another whole people for profit for the entire colonizing nation. That is what colonialism is. So obviously we have colonialism right here inside the borders of the United States, something that is not acknowledged by most white people. But yet we all know there are two different realities that exist. And the colonial mode of production means that everything that we have, all goods and services, all ability for us to go to college, to have a job, to expect to live in tree-lined streets and not be gunned down or have a cop's knee on our neck until we die, or that's not going to happen to our children. That is based on the reality of colonialism, of this fact that we are the colonizers. White people are the colonizers. And that, as the chairman has said, the question of racism is only the ideological term that explains or that goes with or is the result of the material and political existence of the colonial state. And that I also want to say that they say, and they tell us a lot in our history books, that America is good, that so many hardworking immigrants came here from Europe and worked the land and went to factories and were able to work their way up the ladder of success. And they say that, well, yes, there is the blight on the soul of America. There's this bad thing that happened, the enslavement of African people and the genocide of the indigenous people. That's just bad. It's just over there in the corner. But otherwise, this is a good thing. But what the chairman has done is turned history right side up. The fact is, there is no other economy but that. And everything that we have, that we do, that we expect to use as the ability to create resources for ourselves is on the foundation of the enslavement of African people, the assault on Africa, the kidnapping and human trafficking of African human beings, and the forced enslavement and theft of the genius and talents of African people for 600 years, since 1415. And that this is what transformed Europe and Europeans into white people, into one unified nationality and identity. And that makes so much sense. And this is why even white working people, white working and poor people, would be complicit with our own ruling class over and over and over again in our history. And we can look back. Who did the lynchings? Who picked up the gun against the indigenous people? Who participated in the genocide and instigated it? Who did that? Many, many times, most times, white working people participated in it because we recognized that we were white and therefore we were fighting for our right to stand on this pedestal of the oppression and suffering and colonial domination of African people and indigenous people and oppressed peoples on the planet Earth. And that we have an opportunity today to move forward, to step out of this opportunism, this self-centeredness, this, as the chairman called, naming ourselves as the subjects of history, but everybody else are the objects of history. We are the ones that we write our history, and people have names and struggles and all of this. But indigenous people and African people are nameless, are some historical fact that can be put in a history book that doesn't mean anything to us. And what we're saying is that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has brilliantly and courageously fought against the headwinds of counterinsurgency, the war against the African Revolution of the 1960s. He had made a pledge a long time ago when he formed the African People's Socialist Party in 1972 to solve the problems of the revolution, to bring the science, to make sure that this time around, African people will win and this system is going to be destroyed. And white people have the ability to take this on, to take up this challenge, to go behind enemy lines, to be the second front that was also attacked on that day as an attack on the party. And that we have the ability to go in, to win other white people, to build organization, not just sit in a cafe and talk about it, to build organization, to win other white people, to do this work, to say that this is the only future. This system is in a crisis right now, as we can see all around us. And this is the time when the African Revolution is winning and the peoples on the planet Earth, the resistance is fierce. And that's why, as the chairman has told us, that the system is in a crisis. And we have to win reparations. We have to return the stolen resources, not as charity, again, but as what is owed to African people. These are their resources. This is the true redistribution of the wealth of the world into the hands of the true working class, which, as the chairman says, is found in the colonial contradiction. It's found in the colonies, the colonized African working class, leading the struggle for what will be ultimately true socialism on this planet under the leadership of oppressed and colonized peoples. And it's in our interest to do this, to get off the pedestal, to get beyond what they expect of us, to be guided by our stomachs and pocketbooks and what we're going to do next weekend and the next vacation we're going on and the next house we're going to buy. This is the opportunity to join humanity, to make our self-criticism to African people, to have a principled relationship, not as colonizers, not as tourists, not as people who want to control or appropriate the culture or the lives of African and oppressed people around the world, but to have genuine solidarity that now enables us to be part of the planet in a principled way. So I want to call on everybody to join this, to help raise resources, to take on this call, and let's make Minneapolis an Uhuru stronghold. Let's make it stand in solidarity with African people under the leadership of the African Revolution. And I just want to say one more thing, that this struggle, this attack by this colonial state, by the FBI, it's not over. It is something that they, as the chairman said, they have stolen all the laptops, all the materials, everything of all of the organizations of ourselves, of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And we don't know what they're going to do next. That's why we have to build a strong movement and a strong front of white people who are publicly out there. There has been incredible, just an outpouring of support and solidarity with the African People's Socialist Party from around the US and the world. But it's gotta be more, it's gotta be ironclad. We have to come together to raise the $500,000 that is needed for the legal defense to take on these struggles that will be talked about a little bit later. So I just really want to salute again, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, all of you here in Minneapolis, and know that we can build a movement of unity through reparations. Uhuru. Uhuru.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny. Who's with us so far today? Making sense and yep. Good. So we have now reached the time in the afternoon, whereas we will bring up our keynote speaker, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. It is an honor to introduce this revolutionary leader you have already heard so much about, whose vision, theoretical worldview, and strategy to win revolution in his lifetime, none of us would be here today. For 50 years, this brilliant African revolutionary has built from the ashes of defeat a global revolutionary movement of African workers uniting as one nation and a unified strategy to liberate their Africa and Africa's resources as the birthright of every African person on this planet. He is the author of many works, key in the understanding of how to move the African Revolution forward and carry it to fruition, including his most recent book and report to the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, Vanguard, the Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. He is the founder and leader of the Uhuru Movement and provides leadership for the entire world revolutionary struggle, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and African Socialist International. Please join me in welcoming Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Uhuru. First of all, I'd like to express my deep and profound appreciation to Comrade Sarah for the introduction, for all the work that I know you've done in building for this event. I'd also like to extend appreciation and solidarity to Comrade Leah Fifield, who has been an extraordinary stalwart force doing the political work here in Minneapolis. And of course, there's Lisa Watson, and there are all of you who participate as part of the Minneapolis, Minnesota Uhuru movement. Thank you very much. I would like to express my appreciation to those of you who've come out as well. This is an extraordinarily critical moment in history. I don't have to tell you that that there is a tremendous transformation, a reconfiguration of the political and economic configuration of the planet Earth. You see that every day. You see various manifestations of that. You see perpetual warfare going on, unending war, and extraordinary explanations for why these wars occur. You see profound crises domestically, as expressed not only by the uprisings that in part were sparked from here, where we are now, with the brutal colonial murder of George Floyd. We can talk about that, but that is the problem there, is that it is so ordinary in the sense of the treatment of our people here and around the world. But there was an extraordinary explosion of resistance that expressed itself to public view that this country has to deal with. And this is just one manifestation of it, domestic. We have our headquarters in St. Louis now as a consequence of the 2014 murder of Mike Brown that was there. It was a brutal, broad daylight murder too, where they killed this young African man, gunned him down, broad daylight, and left his body, a rotting corpse, for 4.5 hours there in 100-degree plus weather on asphalt. As an example for all of the other African people there, this is what we'll do to you as well. You saw the uprising in that community that fought the police, that some people had never seen the US military function this way domestically with the hardware they brought out. And some of you learned about this program they have through that they say they use to employ, what do they call it, excess military weapons from the Pentagon. They give it to police organizations throughout the country. And how can there be excess if they've been doing it over and over and over every year? Of course, what we were looking at was the fact that in this country, the United States Pentagon, in violation of its own rules and laws, operating in the cities and throughout communities in this country, domestically, with police forces. And it becomes clear to a lot of people, it has become clear to a lot of people, that what we refer to as the police is nothing but a domestic military force. That's not unlike the military forces that this government has used in Afghanistan, that is used in various other places where people are fighting for their lives against a vicious social system that has come into existence at the expense of the majority of the peoples of the world who are fighting for our very lives today. And this is part of the crisis that this country and this system has now encountered. So domestically, we see that. Domestically, we see the situation as it expressed itself on January 6th, something that they don't know quite how to talk about. Because I am facing a charge. The police, the FBI, along with local police organizations, came to my home at 5 o'clock in the morning, pre-dawn raid. And they used grenades, they used armored vehicles, they zip-tied me, handcuffed my wife, and they threatened me with this laser targeting devices that were attached to assault weapons. And so we had this military force. Make no mistake about it. For those of you who are old enough, it was no Ephraim Zimbalist that we were looking at that attacked in my house. These were military forces. They wore camouflage and flak jackets, and as I mentioned, had armored vehicles and assault weapons. Used grenades, even up the stairwell of my house. Raided it, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't make any sense, because they said they were doing it in part because the Russians encouraged us to run candidates in 2017 and 2019 in St. Petersburg, Florida, for local government, for local office in the government. The Russians, they said, it funded it, encouraged us to do this. That's why they said they attacked us. Now, I participated in organizing for the right of Black people to vote in this country. I was there in the South doing that kind of work. And they were saying then that the Russians, the communist outsiders, were responsible for people coming into the communities, organizing African people to vote. And now I'm hearing it in what year is this? 2022. That's the Russians who are responsible for the work that we do. Well, I've been doing it since the 1960s. How in the hell there were no Russians there? And in 1963, 3 Black girls were murdered in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, and they're using the same kind of excuse that outsiders and Russians and communists were responsible for this attack on the right of African people to participate in the democratic process as they characterize it inside this country. We're not allowed to utilize the democratic space that Black people fought for. It is we who died in these churches and who were bombed and our leaders assassinated just for the right to join the Democratic Joe Biden's party, Obama's party. We are the ones who paid the price for that. And we were being killed for it then, attacked for it then. In 2022, July 29th, 5 o'clock in the morning, we're still attacked for the same thing. Despite the fact that in 1965, the United States passed a law, the Voting Rights Act, that ostensibly provided universal suffrage. Everybody has the right to vote. Now they said. That's what they said. And so now here the FBI is attacking us for that question. So we need $500,000 for legal work in part for legal work, other defense work. But we do not expect to be, nor do we intend to simply be there and victims and targeted by the federal government, the United States government, whether Trump, Biden, or anybody else. Black people are going to be free. And we fought for this democratic space. We fought in the democratic space to utilize it in order to advance our struggle as far as it was possible to advance it using the democratic space that Black people fought and died for. That's something that should be really important, because most of what is recognized as democracy, democratic rights in this country were rights that were fought for and advanced by the struggle of African people in this country historically, forever. It's we who advanced the struggle for freedom more than anybody else, whether that was after they first kidnapped us and brought us here from the plantations throughout the South and various other places. African people have been in the vanguard of that struggle. And now they're going to attack me and my party, my wife, my family, our organization for being in the employ of Russians for trying to vote in America, where Americans have killed us to prevent us from being able to vote, not Russians. And I think we opened this up talking about Uhuru, which is freedom. It's Uhuru, it's freedom in Swahili. And we say it in Swahili because it's a reminder to everybody that African people are not indigenous to this land. And the name that I was given at birth by my parents was Joe Walter. That name is not indigenous to where I came from. And this is an indictment, not on Russia. This is an indictment on Europe. This is an indictment on the colonial power. This is how I happen to have a British name. And I don't know an African with a Russian last name. And that's the way I would quote, if you will, the statement by Muhammad Ali in the 1960s during the time the United States was making war against the heroic people of Vietnam. And he refused to go and fight for them, and they punished him for them. They took away his title. They wouldn't let him fight for a long period of time. When he said, ain't no Vietnamese ever called me nigger. And his statement was the struggle of African people in this country right here, not in Vietnam. My struggle ain't in Ukraine. It's right here. And the fact of the matter is African people globally are fighting against a global colonial power and a global colonial mode of production. It is this that thrusts Europe to the pinnacle of what they would characterize as civilization. As quiet as it's kept. There's no hat makers in Manchester, etc., who improved the means of production to such an extent that capitalism would burst forward. It was the fact that a Europe that as recently as 1347 through 1351 lost half the population through plague, which meant there was no meaningful economic development, couldn't have been any meaningful economic development throughout Europe. And even before that, as going back to 1320s, etc., a Europe that was so impoverished that didn't even exist as Europe, where just warring tribes that identified themselves primarily in relationship to each other. The Goths, what else? Saxons, Anglos, all of these. These were the groups that got consolidated later on through the process of attacking Africa and the rest of the world. Before then, there was no Europe. There was no resources, etc. And then you were talking about in the 1300s, 14th century, England was so poor that literally this was the era of feudalism that we're talking about. When we met what we now call Europeans, they were living under feudal domination despite the myth of the white man's burden that sent them out to Africa and other places and to the Americas to civilize us, to bring knowledge and resources to us according to that myth that they call history, right? And so you had an impoverished, starving, oppressed peoples all over this area that they now call Europe. So poor in England that I've read that people were eating their dogs and cats and bird poop, literally, and sometimes their children. And I'm mentioning this because of this myth that has been created to justify the murder of Africans and oppressed peoples around the world, made famous by Rudyard Kipling, you know, that the reason they're out here is taking up the white man's burden. They're killing and murdering African people and the indigenous peoples here and other peoples around the world, not because they want to, because they're bringing Christianity and civilization to us. They've assumed the white man's burden. Somebody's got to do it, right? And this is also how America finds itself with this great dilemma today. And the whole colonial world finds itself with this great dilemma today. Europe itself was conceived through slavery and colonialism. It was colonialism. You see, sometimes you'll read about how capitalism came into existence and they talk about trade and the expansion trade, etc. Yeah, trade. Trade. It was colonialism. It was colonial slavery. We were first capital. Africans were first capital. We were first workers in this system that they created. And they connected the entire world together through this process of a world economy that didn't exist before. Not a single world economy, tied together now. And this is the point. This is the thing that allowed this whole notion that Europe is the entity that is responsible for progress in the world when Europe was born through my enslavement. White man was born. There was no such thing as the white man. Look at that. That's white. White never was something like something that reflected light, etc. White is a political concept. It is an ideological concept that came into being, that was used to justify the relationship that the colonizer has to those of us who are colonized, with Africa being central to the colonial domination that came from this entity they call Europe. And of course, what we saw is what gave definition was, for the first time in history, it gained the emergence of a world economy. It's been called any number of things, triangular trade and all of these other things that they refer to, but a world economy linked the whole world into a single economy. And it's a parasitic economy from its beginning. I'm saying that for people who, like me, love Vladimir Lenin from Russia. But Lenin was wrong when he talked about imperialism being the highest expression of capitalism. We say capitalism is the highest expression of imperialism. That the fact of the matter is that capitalism was born from empire, from colonialism. This is what hooked the entire world together, and it disappeared Black people and the oppressed people of the world. So now, those who are the colonizers right-wing colonizers, left-wing colonizers, fascist colonizers, democratic colonizers, colonizers all. They have defined the world and defined me. And define themselves as the pinnacle of civilization, and the rest of us and me as some kind of auxiliary force that might be helpful or not, depending on how you interpret what they refer to as the national question, right? Well, the fact is that we need to turn this thing right side up. And that's what we want to do today. And that's what I want to talk to you just briefly about. Because we do want you to join this Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign. And in so doing, to do more than simply take some kind of defensive posture with the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, but to join in an offensive against this social system that almost everybody who would come to a meeting like this say that you hate. Say that you hate in terms of how it treats the environment, how it treats people, the ongoing wars and things like this. How to stop it is the question. And the question that we have to answer is all of the activities that most of us are prone to be engaged in. To what end? Do we just forever engage in protest when we can do a protest, and a boycott when we can do a boycott? To what end? And what I'm asking you to do is to be conscious of the need and the requirement to overturn a system based on parasitism. It is a parasitic social system where there are slaves and slave masters, colonizers and colonized, where there are workers and bosses that extort, bosses that extort value, not from anything they created, but from working and oppressed peoples all around the world. From my Africa, the richest piece of real estate on the planet Earth, the richest continent on the planet Earth, there's not a single modern economy in the world that could survive without access to the resources that come from Africa. That doesn't even get mentioned when they are talking about who's going to control the world and what the world is going to look like. We've been pushed out of history. And our movement is one that is designed to regain our traction as human beings and to push back against a social system that has no redeeming value. It never has had any redeeming value. It has done everything possible to dehumanize people, to bestialize human beings, etc. And so we are engaged in taking that on and changing that. So I want to say that right now, something extraordinary is happening. And the world has changed. It's changing as we have this discussion. Some people ask the question, why is it that we would be attacked at this moment? But I want to respond to that, but I want to say, I think it's really important for everybody here to understand that African people are not indigenous to this land. And the people who are indigenous to this land seldom get spoken of at all unless they're in the room. And most of them are living in concentration camps that are euphemistically referred to as Indian reservations. That's an objective reality that cannot be liquidated, must not be liquidated, because that's part of the contradiction that we're dealing with right now. Because the people have been disappeared. And only the colonizers exist. How would they define themselves? Only the colonizers exist to public view. The colonizers, the ones who write the histories and are the subjects of history, make us all objects of history. This is where Sambo came from. We didn't sit down and write Sambo, step and fetch it. The colonizers did that. They defined us. They are the ones who create this image of who we are, and sometimes even African people have come to accept that definition in the absence of having any definition of our own that could explain it, right? Well, so something profound is happening now, and oppressed peoples around the world are rising up, have been rising up for a long time. And this has been the critical aspect of the crisis of the social system. There are some who would define the crisis often as having to do with overproduction. They say the crisis is due to capitalism and overproduction and capitalism, et cetera. You know, you've heard that before, overproduction and being based on a situation where, because the capitalist economy is anarchistic, right? And it's not planned. And if you make a car, you don't make a car based on some plan that's been made, that's assessed what the requirements of society. You make a car because capitalism is based on profit, right? And so the profit is the driving motor. Who can make the profit is the fundamental question. And so you just make as many cars as you can and try to outsell everybody else, right? That's part of this process. And they say, because pretty soon everybody who can afford a car has a car, and therefore this creates a crisis, and this becomes part of the crisis of imperialism. Because if that happens, then nobody's making any cars anymore. That means people are laid off. If people are laid off, they can't pay their rent, they can't buy refrigerators, they can't do this and that, and that's a huge contradiction for the economy. You've heard that. And that's true in terms of how it affects, how it articulates itself in some secondary fashion. But the real crisis rests in the fact that the whole economy is on a foundation of colonialism. Karl Marx said that what he referred to as wage slavery, workers who were paid for their labor, which were Europeans, effectively. He said wage slavery in Europe requires as a pedestal, slavery pure and simple in what he referred to as the New World. The whole thing rests upon the enslavement of African and people around the world. So even the crisis that the white workers may have, or what we characterize as colonial society, has its origin, has its foundation in the enslavement of African and other peoples around the world who are part of the colonial mode of production that has been pulled together, knitted together through this process of terror that's locked us into the single world economy. Y'all with me? Yeah. It's one economy, one world economy, except we've been disappeared and made auxiliary forces. We are the host to this parasite. You know, the parasite and the host is a single system. One can exist without the other. Parasite requires a host for its existence. And that's really important for us to understand, because a lot of people want to make a struggle without destroying the damn parasite. You cannot reform a parasite. A parasite, by its very nature, and for it to exist, has to suck the blood, take the resources of the host. You understand? Right. And so this is this reformism that wants to change things without destroying the parasite. You have a relationship there between the parasite and the host. There's a dialectic there between the parasite and the host. They have a dialectic here between the colonial mode of within the colonial mode of production, which is a dialectic between the parasite and the host. And the host that's most of the oppressed peoples around the world throughout the Americas. Much of Asia, what they refer to as South America, Africa, the host. And this parasite, this blood-sucking Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Obama connected parasite. And it doesn't make any difference what color the parasite is. If it's a part of the system, it's a damn parasite. Right. And Obama worked for the parasite. Just like Biden works for the parasite. Just like Trump works for the parasite. The question we are confronted with is not Trump versus Biden. It's the question of parasitism versus actual freedom and liberation. The destruction of the parasite has to be what we're involved in doing. This is the call that's being made to you, is to join with us. I just want to say a little bit more. Our party determined a long time ago that the African Revolution, we were formed in 1972 as a party. My political work began before. I was kicked out of the military, US military. I joined the military when I turned 18 years old. because I assumed at the time, kind of sort of, that the limitations that I was confronted with in this tiny tourist city down south in St. Petersburg, Florida, had to do with where I was located. And so I joined the military, because join the military and see the world, that was the slogan. And it didn't even take a train ride from St. Petersburg, Florida to see that every place under colonial domination was St. Petersburg, Florida. Every place. And so eventually I was there in Berlin when the Berlin Wall was there. I was there. I was in one of the first tanks, military tanks that faced the Russian tank in a combat posture in Berlin. I was there. And I was also there when these comrades broadcasting from Eastern Germany were saying, this is now something from Louis Armstrong playing the best music. That's what we turned to their radio. I'm in a tank. I'm in a tank in freezing weather. I'm from Florida. I literally thought I was going to die. I had never been so cold in my life. I'm in a tank in Berlin, Germany, facing Russians from the south. And this woman comes over and she says, we're playing the song by Louis Armstrong. I think she said the name of it is Peace Down South. She said, but there has been no peace down south since the Civil Rights Movement kicked off. And I'm in a tank facing Russians in a combat mode. And I'm also having to review the fact that Black people in America are being killed and attacked with water hoses and cattle prods for just trying to vote. So anyway, I ended up back in Georgia, and I began organizing in a very serious way. And they decided, we came to a mutual agreement. I wrote Kennedy, who was then president, a 13-page letter telling him he needed to fight his own wars because I wasn't doing it no more. And so they sent for me, and eventually, after having sent me to 2 psychiatrists, because something must be wrong with me, and with the latter determining, well, there's nothing wrong with you, you're a Garveyite. I didn't even know what a damn Garveyite was, you understand? But this white boy knew about Marcus Garvey. And I knew if the way I felt had something to do with him, I wanted to find out something about him too, right? And so they court-martialed me on 3 charges. Something they said happened months ago. I beat the charges because I organized the whole battalion of Africans. All the Africans came to testify as witnesses in my case. This was an extraordinary problem they had. And so they couldn't find me guilty just based on that, because they would have found every African in the battalion guilty and they needed them, right? And by the way, just as an aside, while I'm there, the Cuban Missile Crisis, as they characterize it, happens. So I'm in Fort Benning, Georgia. I'm in the U.S. Army, right? And so they're sending a convoy of troops from Fort Benning into down Florida, near Cocoa Beach in Florida. There's an Air Force base there. And on the way, we stop in a place called Palaca, Florida. And we get off in Palaca, Florida to go and eat in our uniforms. We're American soldiers. And we go into the restaurant, and the white woman who was working there says, we don't serve your kind, not me. And so my officer, I'm in the army, says to me, quite stoutly, don't worry about it. We'll bring you something up when we eat. I'm in the military. This is no Russian. This is an American officer in this convoy. So this is just some of the history that I'm talking about. And this is how part of how my political education was unfolding. And so I began to struggle, and we departed ways. They put me on the court-martialed me, couldn't find me guilty, but they decided I should leave anyway, and put me on a truck, on the armed guard, and took me off the base, which was fine. I think I've read Malcolm X characterize himself at different times as the angriest black man in this country, but I really believe he held a long distance second to me, because I was angry as hell by the time. I mean, you talk about, you felt like you've been had, duped. Our forefathers this, and our forefathers, what forefathers? You know, I mean, been duped. And so this is how my political education was unfolding for me at the time. This is my connection with Russia and Russians initially. So I get to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I began to organize there, and I joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. And SNCC is the organization that took up the position of Black Power, which was a frightening, terrifying vision. And I saw, really deep and erudite pundits on television talking to each other back and forth. Black Power, Chuck, what do they mean by Black Power? I understand black, and I understand power. But Black Power, this was, this was an extraordinary thing for them. And so I was involved politically with SNCC. I was arrested on December 29, 1966 for tearing an 8 by 10 foot mural that was on the wall of the city hall in St. Petersburg, the center of local government. Tore it down, smashed it down, during part of a demonstration that I led as the leader of SNCC. And I was arrested and by a trembling cop, because they had never run into Black Power. They'd never run into Africans who had taken this stance. They were so accustomed to we shall turn the other cheek and that kind of organization. And so they were startled and actually terrified. The cop who arrested me was trembling when he grabbed me. And they tried me. They took me to trial sometime like 10 o'clock at night. They charged me with 11 different offensive offenses. They actually on two of them, one for destruction of public property and another which is the mural itself. And the mural, by the way, was this grotesque caricature of Black people. You know, you might run into a Klan literature or something, just grotesque caricature, with huge pink lips all over our face and elongated limbs and things like that, who were supposedly entertaining white people on a picnic in the St. Petersburg, Florida area. And so they charged me with 11 different offensive and destruction of public property and grand larceny were two of those. And destruction of the grand larceny, which is depriving the owner of something and something to that effect, actually was the term came from the destruction of public property charge. As I say, I had destroyed the public property, and I was the grand larceny was keeping it from the owner by destruction. So it was double jeopardy. You understand? Except it hadn't been determined to be double jeopardy at the time. So my lawyer took it to the Supreme Court based on double jeopardy. So the Supreme Court said if what they said is true, if that happened, that's double jeopardy. Because they needed to solve that problem. That was a problem that they had in terms of the legal problem. And so they threw the case out and remanded it to the state, the city of St. Petersburg. And they said, no, that's not what happened. They tried me again. And instead of the 5-year sentence that they had given me, they gave me a 3-year sentence this time. So the point is that, it didn't take Russians to help me to understand anything. I grew up at a time when white people just walked in your house. You understand? Where the insurance man just walked in your house. And until I start telling them to get the hell out of my house. And I'm the child in the house, you understand? But that's the reality I'm confronted with. And so now I'm told that the Russians are the ones who are responsible for my attitude in the political work that I do. So this is the basis of my being organized. I'm telling you this because I don't want this to appear as some kind of abstract question around justice and freedom, etc. This is the reality. And it doesn't even get to any essential, but this is reality of part of my experiences in the world. Had nothing to do with any Russians. It had to do with Americans. And so, we began to organize. And since that time, I've been organized. I've been in and out of prison, jailed throughout the state of Florida in particular. I've had to endure FBI attacks and assaults. I was handcuffed in the back of a police car in St. Petersburg, Florida. My handcuffs, I was beaten, clubbed, which was, as we characterized it at the time, the most expensive fat lip in the history of the world, because urban guerrilla warfare broke out in the city at that time that lasted for months. In 1996, the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida, came under attack by more than 300 military forces. They used all the tear gas in the city of St. Petersburg on our headquarters and office. They came with airplanes and a light helicopter. They set the trees on fire around our headquarters and actually tried to set the building on fire using tear gas canisters that would ignite when they hit surfaces, etc. And the only reason I'm talking to you right now, standing here talking to you right now, is because the people in the community rose up and they actually brought a helicopter down by gunfire and chased the police out of the community. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. They intended to kill me then. They didn't say Russians then. Only reason I'm recounting this is because it's bogus. Every charge they've made is bogus. And they know that African people know they're lying. And they know that so many other people know they're lying. And they don't care that you know they're lying because they feel like they got the guns and they can do what the hell they want to do. They control the court system. They can make it do what they want it to do. I know they can make it do what they want to do. There's no doubt about it in my mind because I have been in situations where they have planning to give me time. And we were able to successfully mobilize forces and judges changed their minds based on that. And if the oppressed do not have the ability to deliver a consequence, the oppressor will always do what it wants to do. My objective here, I don't intend to be a martyr. I have been told by legal people that you shouldn't say anything because anything that you say, they're going to use it. They're going to make it mean what they want it to mean, that somehow you and the employer are Russians. They said because you have had webinars that said that the attack on Russia by the so-called NATO forces, by the United States started more than 100 years ago. In 1918, right after the Russian Revolution, when all of the colonial powers, including America and Japan, invaded Russia. Because Russia had been cast into a revolutionary position based on the anti-colonial movements that were sweeping the earth. That the First World War was designed to smash, that the First World War was contrived to divide the world among these colonial powers. And so you had revolutionary struggle happening all over, including in this country. You remember the Red Summer? You're talking about 1917, 1918, 1919, 1917. By 1919, Marcus Garvey had organized some 11 million Black people around the world into a common movement, even as they were talking at the League of Nations subsequent to the First Imperialist World War about who was going to get what parts of Africa. Garvey stood up and said, Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. This was a fundamental challenge to the colonial mode of production. All of Africa was in play, and they intended to have it all. And so they redefined the world, redefined me, redefined themselves. And now they have a problem. Because a problem is, and I'm going to quit. I understand I have a couple of minutes. I want to just say a couple of things. A problem began, especially with the rise of the colonial era, and how the colonizers, in particular England, wanted to define itself as some kind of rules-based entity, some liberal imperial democracy and liberal democracy. And they had to ask, and where decisions could be made by people coming together and voting their choices and having democratic rights and things like that. But England had to answer the question, how in the hell can you talk about being this great democratic force on the one hand, when England, up until 1945, controlled a quarter of the world's population and a quarter of the territory on the planet Earth. And you know, it was so democratic. Remember, the people bragged about it because the Bobbies didn't carry guns. The English cops didn't carry guns. They were unarmed because there was a Pacific kind of relationship that existed in England. You can't be more democratic than that, they said. Except England was not like that in India. England was armed to the teeth in this entity that they created that they call Nigeria, the nigger area. And throughout Africa and other places around the world and throughout the Caribbean, it was armed to the teeth. And there were no rights then. And so now the British and all the other imperial forces, they have to explain how in the hell, on the one hand, can they be this democratic force for good, but on the other hand, be so vicious in terms of the relationship with people who were colonized. Of course, this is where what we are looking at now. Because now Joe Biden has defined the contradiction in the world as being one between democracies and autocracies. And the democracies, the United States had all the democracies, all the colonial powers of the democracies, and the autocracy, Russia, China, Iran, anybody they got a problem with is an autocracy. This is where the contest is. And so the fact that this great democracy has seen with the murder of George Floyd, thousands of people uprising throughout this country, this great democracy. How do you explain that? How do you explain Mike Brown? How do you explain what's happening to the indigenous people in this country? How do you explain all of that? And so the way they're explaining it now is because what you are looking at when you hear criticisms of what America is doing to African people, when you hear those criticisms, those are not coming from Black people. That's coming from Russia. Russia is responsible for it. So when they use flashbang grenades at my house, threaten my life, threaten the life of my wife, attack our offices, steal our equipment and materials, etc., they're not attacking us. This is not the Black community they're attacking. This is Russia. But I guarantee you their GPS is not that bad. They know the difference in St. Petersburg, Florida, and St. Petersburg, Russia. But it's easier to fight in the colony, the most economically depressed sector of St. Louis, than it is to fight the Russians. It's easier to fabricate this wall that they've been making against Russia since 1918, using Ukraine, than to go directly at Russia themselves. It's easier to send Nancy Pelosi and this Negro, Gregory Meek, to part of China that they call Taiwan, as a provocation to China, than it is to attack China itself. So they will make Taiwan become the force that's going to do it. They will make Ukraine the force. They will kill everybody in Ukraine. They will kill everybody they can in Taiwan to carry out their mission to cripple any force that's out there that challenges the hegemony of this political and economic configuration, the colonial mode of production. That's what they're about. And the African People's Socialist Party, we exist in various places throughout Africa, throughout the Caribbean, in Germany, in France, in England, in Belgium, and throughout the United States as well. And this is a war that they've targeted, make it very clear. They see Russia as an existential threat to the existing social system. They see China as an existential threat to the existing social system. And they see Africa as fundamental to that, which is why they attacked us, which is why they have Gregory Meek from New York get legislation passed in the U.S. House of Representatives declaring that any country in Africa that supports Russia in this contest with Ukraine should be punished by the United States. This is why you have, for the first time in its 246-year history, the Marine Corps has picked a 4-star general, never happened before. And guess what his job is? Presiding over African land, to control Africa and to make sure that Africa is never in the possession of Africans again, and that can deal with China and Russia who are making inroads into Africa. That's why for the first time in its history, there's an African who is what do they call him, Secretary of Defense, Lord Austin. First time, never happened before, former general, for the same various reason. Africa, Russia, China. This is what they see as the threat to the existing social system, and the African People's Socialist Party, they see as the advanced detachment, the vanguard in this struggle, particularly in this country and much of the world. We need you to join, not to just be spectators. You need you to join. We hope that you will step forward and participate in the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign that we're talking about. And if you can do more than that, do more than that. If you can do it openly, do it openly. If you can't do it openly, do it secretly. But do it. You just can't sit still at this fundamental time in world history. The world is changing. Let's be a part of that change. Uhuru.
Let's give one more round of applause. Okay, this is not the first time I've emceed a USM event, and every time coming back up after the chairman, I feel rather speechless, but now I've got to pull something together. And it's I imagine it was as powerful for everybody out there as it was for me, as it is every time. So we're going to move forward, and I'd like to bring back up Chair of USM, Jesse Neville, for our next segment.
True. Let's give one more round of applause for Chairman Amali Chapella and Chairwoman Penny Beck. One of the we appreciate, and Dan's here. Those were just magnificent, powerful presentations, and just the note that the chairman just ended on, that we can't sit still at this fundamental moment in history, really resonated with me. And that's what this next section in the program is all about, is taking action, what we can do right now in this event tonight to be a part of this historic revolutionary transformation that's happening all around the world. So we're going to talk about how everybody here can participate, both in contributing resources towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee, and also contributing yourself and your time and your passion and talents to building this movement, to building this counteroffensive campaign, and building the Uhuru Solidarity Movement right here in Minneapolis. So you can go to the next slide. Turn over to you.
Okay. So originally, this tour was launched to raise resources for the Uhuru Health Center. Uhuru in Swahili means freedom to nurture. In addition to the health center is a doula project. So raise resources for both of those things. And this is only one project within the ever-growing Black Power Blueprint. Go ahead to the next slide. And in order for today's event to happen, prior to today's event, there have been many hardworking fundraisers and donors in Minnesota and beyond that have raised funds for this health center through direct appeals and events such as yard sales, online trivia, direct kind of solicitations from friends and family. And I'd like to take a moment to appreciate our donors and fundraisers for supporting the Uhuru Health Center and African Doula Project within our local organizing committee. And so far, we've been able to raise over $3,000. We make no mistake that this is, again, they're not donations per se, but it's $3,000 in reparations, which is what has been paid to fund the health center. So I want to give a big thanks to our local organizing committee who has done this work thus far for participating and making reparations a reality. So a huge thanks again to Leah, who unfortunately has not been able to be here today. Lisa Watson, Lee Rhodes, Pamela Eichen, there she is. And Kelly, who's also not been able to be here. But thank you so very much to everybody who's put in all the hard work to raise these reparations so far.
And another person who's put in a lot of hard work and raised a lot of reparations for the health center, including from family and friends of hers, is Sarah right here. So I just want to shout out Sarah. So all of the funds that are contributed today will go to the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee. And we see a direct connection between supporting the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee, the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, and the support and solidarity with the Black Power Blueprint. Because when you contribute to the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee, you're taking a stand in solidarity with the right of African people to organize and advocate for their liberation and to build political and economic power in their own hands, which is precisely what came under attack on July 29th by the FBI. So funding the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee is a way of saying, hands off the economic and political empowerment work of the African People's Socialist Party. Hands off the Black Power Blueprint. Hands off the Uhuru House. Hands off the One Africa, One Nation marketplace. Hands off the Black Power Vanguard's basketball court. Hands off the Uhuru Wakulia Health Center and Doula Project, and hands off all of the work that the Uhuru movement is doing around the world. Go to the next slide. So this was mentioned by the chairman and by Chairwoman Penny Hess that the overall goal to raise funds for the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee is $500,000. And as the chairman said it, it's not about waiting around for indictments and having money to be able just to defend people in the case that indictments or further attacks come. No, the party is going on the offensive. So this is very exciting. And this is what we get to be a part of making happen when we contribute towards the Uhuru Legal Defense, or what we might call the Uhuru Legal Counteroffensive Committee that has been assembled in this recent period and following the FBI's attacks. And I wanted to mention that up to now, around $17,000 has been raised towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee. So I want to give a round of applause. That was from many donors throughout the US, especially those who came out to events in Oakland and Portland and Newark and Philadelphia and New York. So now here we are in Minneapolis, and our goal with this tour, which has one more stop in St. Louis, is that we will get to at least $20,000, at very minimum $20,000 by the end of this tour later this month. So tonight, what we want to do today, this afternoon, what we want to do, next slide, is raise at least $2,000 towards the Uhuru legal defense. Do we feel like we can do that tonight?
Yeah.
Good. I agree. How do you feel about that?
I feel like we can do it.
Okay, awesome. So we're all on the same page here. So what we want to start off by saying is that you should have in your program a donor card and an envelope with a pen. I want to make sure everybody has that. Please raise your hand if you do not have one. Okay, so we have one person right here that does not have one. Would it be possible to just pass out to the people who don't? So far, it's only one. Everybody else has it? Okay, great. So the way that you can donate towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee is the easiest way is by actually pulling out your phone and going to handsoffuhuru.org/donate and donating with your card right on the website. You can do that right now, or before you leave today, you can stop and see our table right back there on your way out, and somebody will process your card information before you head out. But even if you donate online, we want to encourage people to fill out the donor cards that you got, because we want to thank you, we want to acknowledge you and be in touch with you about developments in this campaign. So another way you can do it is by cash. You can put cash directly in the envelope, which our comrade here will be picking those up in just a moment when we're done with this appeal. And also you can pay by check, which you can make checks out to Uhuru Legal Defense Committee. So we wanted to start off by asking if there is anybody in this room today that would like to go ahead and contribute $2,000 to the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee. All right, and I let that silence linger for a second because there have been events on this tour where a hand has shot up after letting it sit for a second. And you can also donate anonymously towards this campaign. So, Sarah.
All right. So maybe that might be a little bit too much to swallow. Let's see, is there anybody out there who'd be willing to donate, who has the resources to donate $1,000, half of our goal today?
All right, let's see, 500. Anybody in the room today? Okay, right here. And Uhuru. And we're going to ask you all to tell us your name, even if we might know it. Can you tell us your name?
Lisa.
Lisa, $500. Uhuru. All right. So 1,500 to go to reach our goal. Anybody else that would like to match Comrade Lisa and put in $500 for the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee today? And also, we have people online as well, right? People watching online. If you're online, you can go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. You can also let us know in the chat on Facebook or YouTube if you would like to contribute towards our goal today.
All right, so now we've got some momentum. How about $250? Anybody out there willing to donate $250?
All right.
All right, Uhuru.
That's Dan.
Dan over there, Comrade Dan. Up in the front as well, 250. What's your name? Becky, from Becky. Fantastic. So we're halfway there. Right?
Shout out to AB team who just collectively got us up to $1,000.
Yeah.
All right, Uhuru. We're halfway there.
We're halfway there. See how easy that was?
Let's keep it going. All right. Well, 250. We don't have to stop. Anybody else in the room that wants to be like Becky and Dan here and put in $250 towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee? All right. So we want to bring it to $100. Is there anybody in the room, 10 people that want to give $100 today towards the Uhuru Legal Defense Committee?
Is that a hand back there?
Okay, here we go. All right. Let's go one by one here. All the way in the back there. Can you tell us your name? Christina. Yeah. And over here.
I'm Kathy.
Kathy. Kathy.
Caitlin.
Caitlin. All right.
Okay, I want to do it. I want to do 100.
Okay, there we go. So that just brought us to 1,400.
I think so.
Okay.
1,400.
Pretty good, quick math. It seems like it should be at 1,500. Is there anybody else that wants to do $100 before we move on?
We're so close.
All right, $50. Is there anybody? Yes, Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Okay, 1450.
I'll put in 50 as well.
There we go.
All right, can you tell us your name?
Andy.
Andy.
All
All right,
right.
we're Andy.
We're Andy.
That brings us to 1550.
1550 by my count. Yep.
All right. Can you tell us your name?
Jimmy.
Jimmy. Uhuru Jimmy. Right.
800.
We're getting there. We're getting there. And again, these resources are going towards a fund that will fuel a counteroffensive campaign, which is first and foremost a political campaign. It's going to be led by the political aims and objectives that you've heard about in this event tonight, and which will push the FBI and the US government on the back foot. They have to defend themselves. They're going to need to form a defense committee to defend themselves against what this movement is going to unleash through this counteroffensive. So we're at 1,600.
1600. Yeah.
So do we have a? Yes. So Comrade Hallie will be collecting the envelopes. And so if you're ready for yours, you can just hold it up and we can start doing that now. We have a basket coming around and we're at 1,600. So $25. Is there anybody in the room that would let? All right, Uhuru, can you tell us your name? Liz, Uhuru Liz. We're at 1,625.
1625.
And just want to throw out any other amounts. It can be any random amount that people would like to contribute today. All right, so we also want to, again, let you know that you can contribute anonymously. We have people online. So we're expecting that we'll continue to see donations coming in even as we move forward in the next couple of phases of this event. And before we close out tonight, we will come back up and announce where we're at. And we really want to struggle to raise the full $2,000 today. So anyone who hasn't contributed yet, you can fill out those donor cards. You can go to handsoffofuru.org. Let's go to the next slide. And okay, this is how to donate. So this is just what I was saying before. You can fill out the donor card. You can pay by cash, card, or check. And again, the easiest way is just to go to handsoffofuru.org/donate. And if we go to the next slide. So the last two things we want to talk about before I turn it back over to our MC is what you can do in addition to donating, what you can do to join the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. One person I do want to give a salute to. Yes.
Oh, sorry. There's one online, 25 from Mwezi.
That's exactly what I was about to mention. It's amazing. All right. Well, salute to Mwezi Odom for the $25 contribution. And also, I was actually about to say.
There's more too.
Oh, great. Okay. I was about to salute Mwezi Odom, who is actually the chair of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign and a leading member in the African People's Socialist Party. So I just want to salute Chair Mwezi Odom. And we have more donations?
Yeah, so Leah Fifield says, my partner Ben is pledging $500.
Wow. That is amazing. That's awesome. Huge salute to Ben. Huge salute. That's great. Wow. So, okay.
Let's see,
My math is we're at 2150.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
$2,150. That is powerful. That's amazing. Feel free to keep interrupting me. I will not be offended. There's more donations coming. Okay. So the first thing you can do is donate. We just talked about that. The second thing you can do, and you can also do this right now, you can get on your phone and go to handsoffofuru.org/petition and sign this petition. We want hundreds of thousands of people to sign this petition demanding hands off Uhuru, demanding an immediate end to FBI and US government harassment, surveillance, infiltration, threats of criminal charges, and otherwise attempting to intimidate and terrorize this movement. And we want an immediate end to that. We are demanding, the party is demanding the release of all documents relating to FBI surveillance of the chairman and the Uhuru movement going back to the 1960s. And there's more. This is what this petition is about. So go to handsoffahuru.org/petition, sign the petition, circulate the petition, spread the word. Let's get hundreds of thousands of people to sign this petition. And 3, you can bring a speaker to your community. Let's say you are a student. Let's say you're a professor. Let's say you're part of a church. Let's say you're part of an organization. You could bring a speaker. You could bring Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chairwoman Penny Hess, and other Uhuru movement leaders to speak to your community. And that is something that you can do to actually build support for this campaign. So you can talk to us about that today, or if you're watching online, you can email events@handsoffahuru.org to get started on that. Number 4, march on the White House. This is very, very important. The Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is holding a Hands Off the Uhuru Movement March as its 14th annual Black People's March on the White House, November 5th and 6th of this year. And we want to be there as the Solidarity Movement in full force. We want to have a major contingent marching right up to the White House in solidarity and unity with the African liberation struggle, demanding US government and FBI hands off the Uhuru movement. So that's going to be again on November 5th and 6th. You can go to blackisbackcoalition.org for more information and to register. And we want busloads of people coming from every city to participate in this march for March on the White House this year. And then finally, you can join the committee. There's a ton of different ways you can participate. You can volunteer if you're an artist, if you're a graphic designer, a video editor, a writer, or just want to organize any skills that you have, a cultural artist, or any skill or interest that you have that you want to put towards this campaign, there is a place for you. So those are what things that you can do to join this campaign. And finally, you can become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. By the way, that is Leah, who we've been talking about throughout this event. And I just want to appreciate all of you who are already members of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in this room. And for those of you who are not, now is the time to join. And to become a member means to say that you unite with these 3 principles. 1, to be under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. 2, to organize in the white community for reparations to African people. And 3, to stand in solidarity with the right of African people to lead their own struggle for national liberation. That is what it means to be a member. We have members in 130 cities, and Minneapolis, as Chairwoman Penny Hess said, is on its way to becoming an Uhuru stronghold, and we will be that many steps further in that direction today if you decide to become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which how could you not after everything we've heard today? So for anyone who is not yet a member, I just want to put out a call and see, is there anybody that would like to become an official card-carrying member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement today? All right, here we go, right in the back there, Christina. That's awesome. Christina's already active in the work, so that's great that you are becoming a member of Uhuru. Anybody else would like to become a member today? All right. Well, I just really want to salute all of you. We raised at least, because we don't know if more came in. Right. We'll find out. Yep. We have raised at least $2,150 today. So I just want to say, hands off Uhuru. Unity through Uhuru.
Hey, Jesse.
Yes.
There's just one more slide.
Oh. One more slide. Okay, so as it relates to building here in Minneapolis, this is the next thing you can come to. And it's coming right up. Saturday, October 8th, 1 p.m. on Zoom. You can join a White Solidarity with Black Power study group, which I believe is going to be studying the Burning Spear newspaper, the latest issue of which is totally covering the FBI attacks on the Uhuru movement. So this is a great opportunity to deepen your understandings and get more involved in building here in Minneapolis. And this is going to be on October 8th, 1 p.m. on Zoom. And while I'm up here, I just remembered another thing I want to announce is that on October 5th, this upcoming Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is hosting a national mass meeting to mobilize for the National March for Reparations to African People. Chairwoman Penny Hess will be speaking at that, as well as the Midwest regional representative of the African People's Socialist Party, Columbine and Danette. So that's going to be a really important opportunity to learn more about what you can do to help rally for the National March for Reparations in St. Louis on October 15th. And that's the last thing I want to close with, is that I hope everybody can do whatever you can to be there in St. Louis on October 15th, in the city of the Black Power Blueprint, in the city where the chairman and deputy chair's home was raided, in the city where the Uhuru Solidarity Center was raided. We want to have a massive showcase of white solidarity with the African People's Socialist Party at our 3rd annual National March for Reparations in St. Louis. So, Uhuru.
All right, we are nearing the end of our event today, but certainly one of the integral pieces here is a Q&A. So I would like to invite back up Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Yes, sir.
No,
For the Q&A, perfect. I'll invite back up Chairman Omali Yeshitela as well as Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Take this microphone off.
Probably don't need a microphone.
You okay?
I don't need a
Okay.
Peace. First of all, I got flyers for this event, and the flyer that was posted publicly, it didn't say anything about you needed to register online, or there had to be some prerequisite prior to coming in, that you had to go to a checkpoint, and all this other stuff. It was publicly placed. This is Sabathani Community Center. It was founded by Black folks for Black folks, with the banner of the red, black, and green in 1968. It's been in the heart of the community, serving the Black community for quite some time. So, first of all, peace. Also, I came because uncle of mine in Florida, I mentioned that there's, a brother from the Uhuru movement, a slogan that I said as a baby, being a child of the movement. So it's nothing new for me, but an uncle of mine in Florida had mentioned that he grew up with this song. So I just wanted to see what was happening. I'm really interested in the whole struggle that exists with Black liberation movements and their partnerships with white liberal communities. So I didn't come here to do nothing but just sit down and listen.
Well, I just want to say that it sounded like you got an extraordinary uncle.
Well, yeah, I've got an extraordinary family.
Yeah.
To my point that I was trying to make.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is that I think you inferred something about what was the requirement for coming in to
Right, my brother, just let me just finish real quick, and I don't mean any disrespect, because I know that I'm trying to keep it all within respect, because I didn't want to interrupt the presentation, but it moved me so much emotionally that I had to keep everything in check early, because I've been an independent Black journalist for years. I don't need to say how many years, because that's not important right now. But I was told when I came in, because I took a couple of pictures, right? And I was going to share them with a couple of people. In a journalistic capacity, as well as just in a human capacity. That I couldn't take pictures. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, this is a little different now. Like, I didn't know this was supposed to be like a white only meeting, but the balance in the room was kind of off. And we're talking about reparations for Black folks, liberation for Black folks. I'm a Black man in a majority white setting, and I happen to be a journalist. I didn't know I had to say that, but this was a public venue and everything like that. And somebody intervened on me immediately. Like I was a security threat. Now I know, brother, you got a lot of heat on you because the federal, all that stuff. I get that. So you have to make certain protocols, right? And usually, from what I understand about the federal government, it's not necessarily somebody from the outside that's gonna get you, it's somebody from the inside that already exists. But I'm just a person independently from the community that wanted to just sit here and listen. So I was intervened like I was a threat. I couldn't take a picture. And then I was told that I would have to, anything that I would have to gather from this particular event would be through your website online. So I was just like, wait a minute, this is a little different. So my guy over here, Nico, who happens to be a part of the press here, walked in. Now he happens to be white. I guess he signed, I don't know if he signed up or not.
Okay, I don't know, I appreciate your observation. Let me respond.
You gotta get that together. I'm giving you a challenge, my brother, because this is important when we talk about.
Give me a challenge of the speech. I want to go ahead and I want to respond to what you just said.
But I didn't finish.
But you,
I want to finish, brother. This white man from the media came in with no interruptions at all, and somebody from the audience immediately checked on him when I was talking to him like I was a security threat. Nico, was that factual, what I just said? So what I'm saying, brother, is when you travel throughout the country and everything like that, and we're talking these, these ideas, because they're ideas, because if we had reparations or liberations within Black folks, this would be a whole different thing.
okay, I'm going to talk now. I really appreciate your observation, but if we're gonna, I'm going to talk now. I'm going to talk now. I'm waiting patiently too. I'm going to talk now. First of all, what I want to say.
Why emotional to me, brother, like I'm a threat? See, this is what I'm talking about. See, white folks in Minneapolis have to understand this.
This ain't about white folks. You and I are having a discussion now. You and I are having a discussion. I'm not talking about white people or anything. I'm talking to you. I'm trying to respond to you. I let you talk for a long time. I did.
No, you interrupted me.
Well, I let you talk longer than anybody else is talking.
But I mean that respectfully. So I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'll just get up and leave.
You don't have to leave.
Because I've already been disrespected, so it's good.
Okay, but leave then, leave. Let him leave. Let this man walk out. Yeah.
What is this, man? Nico, do you believe this?
What is this? This is provocative. This is provocative. It's provocative.
What's provocative is to be in this room and to be told that you cannot participate in a manner that you make your living.
Nobody told him he couldn't.
Brother,
Let me finish.
This is nothing provocative. This is real life. In a city like Minneapolis, right up the street where George Floyd died, because of the same circumstances. But I'm not going to do this because I don't want you to get the wrong idea from where this is coming from. But this is a real spirit talking to you. You understand me? And so you can make it be whatever you want to. But it felt very disrespectful. Brother, why are you on my brother? All right, white people, thank you.
I just want to say in terms of Nico, whoever you are, I just want to say this. First of all, this is a white people's need. That it was organized by white people to win. Listen, man, you're gonna have a discussion or you're gonna talk. It was organized for the purpose of winning solidarity from white people with the struggle of Black liberation. That's why the majority of people who are here would be white. That's where the organizers come from. So that's the basis of that, first of all. Secondly, there are protocols that have been established, and they are established wherever we are. The same protocols were in place when we were in Newark, New Jersey, with an all-African group that we spoke to, when we were in Philadelphia with a majority African group that we spoke to, when we were in Oakland, California with a majority African group that we spoke to, when we were in St. Louis, the same protocols prevailed. These were not protocols that we created to deal with white people to keep Black journalists from doing something. So that's one thing. And I think that it was very rude because it was disruptive. We can establish protocols and say, this is how things are going to go. If you don't agree with that, then you can leave. But that was disruptive and was provocative. And it's almost like the state. It's almost like the same government that attacks us to disrupt meetings and discredit what's being talked about. the first place, he's doing this as a friend. He really loves us, et cetera, but he won't allow discussion to happen. He's going to make his position with the assistance of Nico here, who is going to record it all, the white guy who we didn't ask any questions of. I don't know why Nico questions weren't asked. I had nothing to do with how that happened. I just know that there are protocols that we've established, that there are no protocol that was different here in Minneapolis than any other place. No difference than in St. Louis, where Mike Brown was gunned down in Canfield Drive, where we just had an event there, and we're gonna go back and have another event. No different from what we've done in any other place in the country. So this was not something that was constructed to be disrespectful to Black people. And in fact, anybody who heard this presentation understand that I was speaking specifically in the interest of Black people and trying to win as many white people or North Americans to solidarity with this process. I am not in a meeting with white liberals, as was stated here. The objective is not to deal with liberals. The objective is to deal with people who are able to go beyond liberalism and to take a real stand, as opposed to some compromising liberal stance. So I wanted to be clear of that, and I'm really sorry that this man, who has what sounds like a great uncle or somebody from Florida, would take that kind of stance and posture. It seems provocative and also state-inspired. So, is there anything anybody else would raise?
By the way, my name is Nico, part of Uniform Riot.
Part of which?
Part of Uniform Riot, we're an independent media organization. I'm gonna do a little special on this afterwards. My big question, in Minneapolis, we saw FBI raids in 2009. Democratic government, we're a very DFL stronghold here. FBI raids were here, Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, right? Sort of targeting leftist groups for unknown reasons, or for specifically helping terrorists elsewhere, like Colombia, Palestine. Very similarly, you, your family, your friends, your group gets raided. Democratic government. Can you describe, maybe, is there something within that? Is it like a DFL thing that where they then have chosen to, this is how you like, do you feel like it's a DFL thing where they're choosing to target specifically leftist or pro-Black groups? Or is it a thing where it's just the government in general?
When you say DFL, what do you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry, Democrat in general. So Democrats, the DFL here is Democratic Farmer Labor. So it's a DFL, so that's a Democrat. So I just mean Democrats in general. I apologize.
No, I don't think it's specific to the Democratic Party. That's one of the points I wanted to make. It's not, what I'm saying, it's colonialism, it's colonialism. Whether it's a fascist colonialism or democratic colonialism. I mean, France boasted about, and sometimes not quite truthfully, about being the most serious anti-fascist movement, fighting against Hitler, etc. And at the same time, and this is democratic France, at the same time, democratic France fighting against fascism was also colonial France that held African people in captive in Algeria, held the people in Vietnam had to fight for their lives against French colonialism. And so we don't make a distinction like that way between democratic or fascist or Democratic Party, Republican parties, colonialism. That's the point I wanted to make. And that's why what this meeting has been about and what we're doing throughout the country is winning people who are colonizers. And this is not something that I'm saying as some kind of pejorative statement, but as a definition of a relationship that exists between the colonized and the colonizer, this parasitic relationship, to win as many people as who are colonizers to unity with the colonized. And this is the only way that the colonizers will be able to engage in actual class struggle against this whole social system and the ruling class that exists here and globally. So that's what it is that we've been about. And Nico, I do hope that that you'll treat this correctly. Yes, yes, comrade.
How do you work together with Cuba or people in Cuba?
We solidly, I mean, solid support. In fact, we just had somebody come from Cuba. We have a program All African People's Development Empowerment Project. We've created a Black UMP, which is our response to the Red Cross, if you will, to provide assistance and emergency, kind of stuff throughout the African world. And Cuba has an incredible program around healthcare, and they do a similar kind of work. And so we had people just a couple of months ago who came from Cuba who were a part of being trained in Cuba. So we are solid supporters of Cuba. We initiated the first public meeting in solidarity with the Nicaraguan Revolution, FSLN, in the Bay Area of California. I was in Moscow. This is one of the things that they used against me, but I was also in Nicaragua. And I was also in Northern Ireland at the time of the so-called Troubles, working with the Irish Republican Socialist Party. This is the kind of organization that we are, and not some backwards limited entity that was inferred by the FBI and by this man who was just here. And you may know him and love him, and he may be a wonderful person, but his stance was really horrible stance, and it's in unity with the government's attack on us. And the white people who are here, he's like a Black nationalist. I've fought this struggle all my life. I've been handcuffed in the backseat of police cars and clubbed while handcuffed. I've been shot at. My house has been firebombed. And on July 29th, again, I was attacked. I was in a house, in the Uhuru house on November 13th, 1996, where they intended to kill me then. And this man and the Black community fighting for Black people. This is the struggle I'm involved in, trying to win you and other people to unite in the struggle for liberation so there won't be any more George Floyds, or if there is a George Floyd, there'll be a huge sector of the population here who will stand up in solidarity, who will recognize that what happened to George Floyd was colonialism in action. And that's how colonialism acts all over the world. And that's how the FBI acts all over the world. Right. Good. So, yes, please.
Pastors for Peace, that was more in the 80s, 90s, Pastors for Peace. They just came from Minnesota down to Nicaragua and in solidarity with people.
When were they there in Nicaragua? You know?
Oh, they went many times during the Sandinista times, but then also after the vote kicked out the Sandinistas, they continued. I'm just wondering.
I'm familiar with the name Pastors for Peace. I was in Nicaragua. I was in the first, shortly after the Nicaraguan Revolution, July 29, 1979. I was in Nicaragua in January 1980. Shortly afterwards, extraordinary movement. I met Daniel Ortega, who at the time, and so I'm not sure if I met and knew, had any direct connection with Pastors for Peace.
I guess just being from Minnesota here, I'm more familiar with like the Nicaraguan Solidarity Committee, and then I forgot what it's called, something that's in Minnesota, Cuba, something or other. That's
right.
Very much in solidarity with Cuba now. So I'm wondering if this connects with all those.
I don't know, but here's an issue for me. This has been true since the 1960s, because we met a lot of North Americans who were able to unite with struggles all around the world, and but who would not unite with the struggle for Black power. Understand? These were people who were really nice people who unite with doing this for El Salvador, this for even in Southwest Africa, right? But this was the critical struggle, and especially for white people in this country who understand or know something about the relationship that African Black people have to this country and to white people in this country, and how easy it was and continues to be for white people to be united with struggles way over there, because they don't offer the same kind of immediate contradiction. Because in many instances, the white liberals that he's talking about are more afraid of Black people and Black struggle than they are of FBI. And what we're saying is we're calling on people to unite with my right. I have a right to advocate for and organize for the absolute total liberation and unification of Black people all around the world and in Africa. That's my right. And you don't have to believe in that. You don't have to unite with that. but you have a responsibility to unite with what you say you believe in, which is democratic rights. You say Black people should have this right and that right. That's the thing that we're calling on you to do. And when we have an opportunity to have this discussion in a good way, without certain kinds of provocation, we'll say more about that, Nico. I'm messing with you.
So then you bring it back to me, can I ask you one last question?
Sure you can.
So
Even though she's trying to discipline me. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That morning, bring me back. I've watched your Democracy Now! Interview. I watched some other interviews you did. I think I mixed with I Like Homie. So there's a couple other things that I saw you talk about, but I would just like to say, or ask you, what specifically, okay, you have that happened in the morning, you're walking down your stairs, the police are out there, they're doing the flashbangs, they got the tear gas or whatever else they got. What were you really what was going on in your head? Were you thinking you might be physically in danger?
I wasn't physically in danger. I thought they were going to kill me. And they killed Fred Hampton at 4 o'clock in the morning in Chicago in 1969. So I thought they were going to kill me. And I think this is the price that Africans pay. And as the man just said, that sometimes there's somebody in the room who will make a provocative statement and I'll turn and do like this, and then somebody from another direction will shoot me. This is the way they work, and you have a whole history here that's really important. You mentioned, and I've heard, something about the attack this from Cuba, the attack who were doing Cuba work, but the reality is the FBI cut its teeth on the attack on Marcus Garvey. They even integrated the FBI, brought the first African into the FBI in order to have somebody who could infiltrate the movement of Marcus Garvey. The FBI filed the same charges, the very same charges that they filed against me, that they infer against me, against W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1951, they actually put him on trial for this. The FBI is responsible for Paul Robeson, 1951-52, being brought before the House Un-American Activities Committee. The FBI hounded Dr. Martin Luther King, tried to make him commit suicide. The FBI participated in killing Malcolm X. And the federal government, through other intelligence organizations such as the CIA, et cetera, killed Patrice Lumumba, participated in killing Lumumba, and participated in overthrowing Nkrumah. This is the relationship that Black people have with this government. And that's why white people who are so-called citizens of this country have a responsibility. And that's why Africans have to be disciplined and conscious of what this struggle is all about. It's not about some insult that you may feel somebody dropped on you in a public meeting like this. It's a fundamental contradiction. And this country and this whole social system is experiencing an existential crisis. That's what sent them to my house in a pre-dawn raid in July. That's what has them fighting like hell in Ukraine. Using somebody else's blood. That's what sent Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. There's a serious existential crisis for the social system. We need to understand that and get on the right side of history and just bring this sucker to an end so that people can live. Human beings can live, and Black people have a right to live too. I just want to say this, Nico. I want to be clear on this, because there's no threat. And the objective is to silence me, to shut me up, to crush our organization, et cetera. And either I can be silenced and not say anything and slink away in the night, or I can stand up and fight for Black people, for Africa, for the liberation of our people, and for the emancipation of humanity. And that's what I chose to do. And so they don't have enough flashbang grenades to stop that. So, yeah. So I'm so sorry. I mean, I know you were trying, I guess. I want to express solidarity with the center, because I think this is extremely important. I don't know anything about the center except the man said it was an African-founded, African-run center. That's what we do in various places where we're located, because it's really important for us to have this kind of political space so that we can have these kinds of meetings with Black people, right? And so I want to just acknowledge that.
I just really want to appreciate Chairman O'Malley Shatella and the African People's Socialist Party and the African Revolution. And I just want to make it really clear that the chairman leads a party, a disciplined organization that spans the globe right now, that's in Africa, that's throughout the United States, that's in London, that's in Paris, that is in the Caribbean, that is very serious about taking power, self-government, and the return of Africa, the liberation of African people, the same kind of goals that the Vietnamese had and defeated and kicked the ass of the French and then the United States. And you know, that this has to be fought for, that we have to understand this, that it is beyond to, you know, just a protest and answering the question, to what end? And we have a responsibility here. So I salute everybody who is still here, who has contributed today. And I'm looking forward to seeing a powerful Uhuru Solidarity Movement here in Minneapolis. And again, I want to thank the organizers. Really want to salute Chairman Omali Shatella for coming here today. And all of you.
You know, my concern with this also is that an incident such as what has happened here, you see, can be used against the movement, especially of white people joining this movement, because there can be some even inference or stated thing that somehow the white people here are against black people, and that somebody was here and saw that we're having all white meetings or something to this effect, and it can be, don't allow that to push you back. That's the thing that I'm saying. And this is a genuine movement. And you can find out about this movement. This is a genuine movement that's that the federal government, the United States government, has determined to be something that's challenging to its existence as an oppressor force in the whole in the world. And moves is motivated by scientific tactics and strategy, by a philosophy, a scientific philosophy. So just some, you know, individual who may sometimes actually mean well, but is not that well informed and is motivated more by subjective and emotional kinds of things, and a distorted understanding of the relationship that Africa and Africans have with the world. That's something that should not deter you. So I want everybody who can be one to be one. And I want you to remember this meeting and also this contradiction, because there are going to be others similar to this kind of contradiction. And this is just because an African doesn't mean it speaks for African people. Look at the history. You can see who we are. We're quite transparent. And we are visible for anybody who wants to see us. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much again for everybody who came. Huge salute to our leadership, Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee and Chairman Omali Shatella of the African People's Socialist Party. Again, just a couple announcements. Monday, October 15th, the March for Reparations to African People in St. Louis, Missouri. Register. It's Saturday, not Monday. Yeah, right. Yep. March for Reparations 2022.eventbrite.com. Saturday, November 5th is the Black is Back Coalition March on the White House in Washington, D.C. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. You can register there at blackisbackcoalition.org and sign up to volunteer with the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign at handsoffuhuru.org. So again, a huge salute to all of our amazing speakers and those who pledged and paid reparations today, and unity through
reparations.